Hello, hello to whoever's listening now. There's not yet out. There is one concurrent viewer now. So one person has dialed in. And let's wait a couple of minutes for people to dial in. I'm seeing my friend with the piano this evening. So hopefully I might convince him to make some nice little music that can fill up the space. Like in these times when we're just waiting for people to dial in. But thanks very much to whoever is already dialed in. Type GM. Yeah, I'll give it another minute and then we'll get started looking at these stats. Meantime, I hope you're all doing well, and I hope this is an enjoyable part of your day, even when I'm the bearer of bad news, which I'm not today. So it's nice. I'm happy to say that things are looking all right today, which, let's face it, they haven't always if you've been dialed in for a while. So, right, I think let's get started. Welcome to the daily NFT market health report by me, Daniel Tenner, aka Swombat, where I look at the data that I believe is driving the market to try and figure out what's happening based on data rather than just on vibes on Twitter and Discord, because data is more useful than vibes. If there's any issues with the sound of the video, let me know so I can fix them. If you don't know how to read the charts, I have put out an explainer video, which is in the description, right at the top of the description of this video. So if the charts look a bit confusing to you, I suggest you watch the explainer video. That would probably be the best thing you can do to make sure you can make use of these charts, even when you don't get my analysis, which is kind of the point. I want you to build your own perspective on what's happening. And I just share my perspective to so that you have one data point. It's just another data point, but it's a less important data point than the actual data, I believe. So let's get started. So if we look at the charts as they are now, we can see that we have maintained a higher low. And by the way, in my threads yesterday, I said higher highs and lower lows. It was meant to be higher highs and higher lows. And here we have this higher low. This one was a bit of a question mark, and this one is now another higher low, and it looks like we're heading up again. Usually this last dot just before the report is down rather than up. So it's good news that this is actually up. We're actually seeing, I mean, this could still be oscillation within the channel in the Zeneca Old, so I wouldn't call this a trend break yet. It's been kind of playing with the 7-day SMA for a few days now. So let's see what it does. I mean, it has broken above the 30-day SMA, which is utterly meaningless, but still nice to observe. As for Zeneca New, yeah, maybe it's doing something, maybe not. It's not yet clear. It's still possibly trending down, or maybe it's kind of finding a bottom and starting to trend sideways, or maybe it's even recovering. We don't know yet. Finally, the women-led projects index, unfortunately, is still continuing to be at historic lows. Volumes there are just very bad. And you know, that's just the way it is. So let's look at the bar charts. We can see what's been happening in the top 10 here. Activity across multiple projects. Macy having some much nicer volumes than usual. It's worth, actually I should have loaded this chart beforehand, but if I put the 120-day charts just to get a bit of context about what's going on here. Just make this here. You know, it looks good in the context of the awful bear market that we've been in. If you compare it to, this is the fire sale, this is the late January bull, this is the late December, early January bull, this is the Jimmy Fallon spike. I mean, you know, we're maybe coming out of the dumps slightly, but we're still like, you know, we're still not in a great place. So, you know, let's not get overly excited. This looks high because the highest bar here is this, but in the larger context, this is actually like, you know, not that exciting, but it's certainly better than it was over here. So that's an improvement. We can see that also there is some activity driven mostly by this orange project. I think some increased activity in Seneca Old. So one to keep an eye on, is that going to be sustained or not? It's unclear. And another orange project also pumping very slightly in Seneca New. So this is why also I'm not 100% sure about this, because this could be driven by a single project. If so, it might just drop down, and maybe it's kind of a news-driven pump or something like that. So I'll keep a cautious eye on this and see whether it actually gets followed. I would expect these indices, Seneca Old and Seneca New, to actually behave more like the women-led project index at the moment, because the sentiment is very bearish, and so people are probably selling out and prices are dropping. And in fact, across those indices, as we'll see, the prices are dropping. Let's go into the deeper analysis of the top 10. So as we said, higher lows. So far, 3 higher highs, 2.5 higher lows, let's say. Just crossed the 30-day SMA, which again is not particularly meaningful, except that if we look at what's happened in the past, we can see that, well, if we look over the last 90 days, we can see that when we're above the 30-day SMA, that was the lead up towards the bull in early Jan. When we crossed below, there was a kind of lull period in mid-Jan where things were looking a bit uncertain. We crossed above again, and that gave us the late Jan bull market, and then we crossed below, and it's been this kind of bear market for the last month and a half, apart from this spike, which was the fire sale because of the Ukraine war. So the fact that if we cross here and we kind of sustain that, I mean, I don't want to call this a bull market support band, but you know, it kind of behaves a little bit like one, maybe. It's up to you what sort of interpretation you make of this, but certainly it's not a bad thing if we're above that line, and if both the yellow line, so the 1-day SMA and the 7-day SMA are above the 30-day SMA. That's probably a bullish signal. If we stay there, that would be good. I mean, here, even with the fire sale, even though the 7-day SMA went up, it did not go above the 30-day SMA. That takes a more sustained rise over about a week in the volumes. So that's looking nice. I also want to point out that so far the prices are still looking like they're trending up. So the price, top 10 price here, is an SMA basically. I mean, it's kind of not, it's not quite an SMA. What it is a moving average over the last 50 sales. That's what I found gives the most helpful chart. So it kind of averages out the last 50 sales, and then that becomes this, and then that is kind of normalized from 0 to 10, and that becomes this index. And then that is averaged across all the different projects in the index, in this case, the top 10. This is averaged across 10 projects, and we can see that there's a sort of slowish trend up in those prices, which is not what I would expect based on it following the same pattern as December. So maybe it's not following the same pattern as December, and maybe we're actually going to see a different behavior where it actually rises alongside the volume right away, which would mean that this volume index becomes less useful as a leading indicator for the top 10, although it might still be useful as a leading indicator for the market as a whole. So yeah, I don't think there's that much else to say about the top 10. It's just looking cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping that we continue to see a kind of trend in this direction, and you know, even if it just trends gently upwards like this, once it gets back to these sorts of volumes, which, like, this is bad day in the bull market volume, we should start to see some, like, at least I expect to see more of a what do you call it, trickle down effect into the other indices once we get to around about this area, so about 4.2, which is an arbitrary number, but is the number that is showing up as an interesting area for me in this chart. Just checking the question there. Okay, I'll think about that at the end. The question about price SMA. So let's look at the other indices. Seneca Old is, as I said, I'm a little bit suspicious of this. It may not be sustained if it's just due to one project having some kind of news-related event. But if it starts to spread, then maybe there will be a, like, you know, it is possible that this is also a trend up. a couple of days later then, or even like from here. So then it would be even at the same time as the Zeneca, as the top 10. It is also possible that this is just, we're still in this trend and there's just a little bump and then it kind of continues to go like this, or like, I don't know, do something, go like this. Like that's also a possible outcome. Obviously, I don't know. I can't tell the future. I don't have a crystal ball. What I can tell is that at the moment, the prices are still going down across this index, because that's what the price index is telling me. So even though there's a slight volume increase here, there is no simultaneous rise in, or I mean, I don't even think I would call that a volume increase, but like, and we're still, to be clear, we're still at the moment at volumes lower than at the depths of the bear market in October and November. And this is Zeneca World, where all those projects were running for a while by the time we hit that bear market. So we're still at abysmal levels there. It could be that the slight volume increase or stabilization is because people are selling out and just cutting their costs and just moving on to something else. And that would explain also why the prices are dipping as the volumes are stabilizing. And that would mean that actually we might expect an even bigger dip in price as the volumes increase, if what's driving the price, the volumes, is people just cutting their costs and just selling out for a loss. Anyway, we'll see. I don't know exactly why that is happening, other than that it looks like at the moment it's mostly driven by this orange project. So looking at Zeneca New, that one, if we look at this 90-day chart, is still very much in a kind of downtrend. Yes, it looks like it's starting to play with the 7-day SMA, which is nice. But again, there's also there the possibility that it's just this project that is pushing it up. So hesitant to call this a recovery in the Zeneca New Index unless we start to see this across multiple projects, or we see that this project is just sustainably doing this, which you don't usually do that. I mean, if you look, typically, even when the project does operate for like at higher volumes for a day or two, it doesn't tend to last that long. So we'd want to see this across multiple projects to believe in this. And here, interestingly, there's a very slight uptick there in the prices, but that could be just a sort of random fluctuation. The trend definitely looks like down. Finally, the women-led projects index, that one is just sad at the moment. We're at, I mean, effectively sort of all-time low, because a lot of the projects in this index got started in December, January, and so on. So we're seeing, I mean, I don't know if I can call this an all-time low. Actually, the all-time low would be this, but we're still at it's the lowest since December. Let's call it that, which is significant. And yeah, it was late December when we last hit such low volumes. The prices do seem to be dipping quite dramatically. I still haven't quite figured out what this little bump here is. So I think it's still more sensible to mentally adjust this downwards, and see that actually what we're seeing is something like this, and a drop here, which doesn't look very great for the women-led projects index. So much for Women's History Month bumping things up. So that's it for these indices. Let's have a quick look at the context of crypto and so on. If you have any questions, please do ask them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them. Better not have project reviews, because I can't really do project reviews live on stream. But if you have questions about the market or other things, like anything other than project reviews, basically, I'm happy to answer. And I'll do my best to answer them after I do this crypto market review. So what we can see here is that, well, it's kind of a fairly sad looking chart, to be honest. I mean, it went up because of the executive order, and now it's kind of like it's basically it formed a lower high, even on this extremely bullish news that the US was not going to go and sort of screw over crypto. So, I mean, I wouldn't be very pleased to be, I mean, I am holding some Bitcoin, but I'm not pleased in the short term about this. It looks like either more sort of slowness or going down. I'm not a crypto analyst, and this is not why you're here, I think. Similarly for ETH, I don't expect it to go up. And that's actually in context, so long as the drop is smooth, it's actually good news for NFTs, because people then flee the Ethereum and Bitcoin to go and find more gains in other places. They're not going to find them in other crypto coins while Bitcoin is going down like this. So they might look in NFTs, and that might bring some volume back into NFTs. So that's potentially positive news there. Let me have a look at the questions. At least volume is picking up, so maybe slowly start to enter back into projects. Yeah, so that is true. Yeah, volume seems to be picking up, but as I said, looking at this screenshot, we're still not very high. This is still very low volumes, and it depends on what your theory is about what's going to happen as volume does pick up. So back in December, well, we can see here. What we can see here is that back in December, volume kind of started picking up early December. There was a kind of dip here that maybe threw off the model or things or whatever. But so that needs to be accounted for as well. There was a massive dip around December 15th. And then from there, it kind of like increased quite rapidly, or from here a bit more gradually, depending on how you look at it. But prices at the same time continued going down with a little bump here, but generally down. And it was until like very late December, that's when they started actually increasing. So right now we're seeing this kind of uptrend here. And it could be that it's behaving differently now and it's just going to go like this, as like the volume is going to go like this and the prices are going to go like this. That is a possible theory. Another possible theory is that this rise here is actually more similar to this little bump here. And then it might go like this and then drop down some more and then go up. Now, there's a sort of trading adage or proverb that you shouldn't try to catch the head and feet, you should try to catch the shoulder and knees. And we're pretty close to the bottom of these, I think, even if there is another drop. So it's probably not a bad place to buy. Depends on what your risk tolerance is and how long you're willing to sit with something that goes underwater, which, if it's a base, for example, to take an extreme example, it could be that before it goes up from, like, let's say it's at right now. So base is currently at 73 ETH. It could be that it drops to 65 before it goes up and then starts going up again. Now, personally, I wouldn't be willing to swallow a 10 ETH loss and sit on it. That just feels quite frightening to me. But different people have different trading patterns. But so for most of those blue chips, yeah, it's probably not a bad buy-in point now. It could still go down, but if this volume recovery is sustained, then it's probably not going to go down for a very long time. So yeah, it's probably going to start going up again fairly soon. So it's probably not a bad buy-in point right now for the top 10. But remember, that's the top 10 price index. If we look at, for example, Zeneca Old, that is still dipping. And that includes the top 10 inside. So it's top 10 plus a bunch of other projects. And that is still going down as a whole. So for other projects that are more accessible than the top 10, a bit cheaper, it's might still be a pretty bad time to buy in. You might want to wait for the volumes to actually confirm this recovery. Again, it depends on what you believe. I also still believe that the volumes, like the price rise, will lag behind the volumes by at least a few days, if not a week or two. So it depends on your theory, basically. You need to make up your own mind about this. But it could be a good entry point into the top 10 if you buy that kind of stuff. There aren't any more questions right now. Oh, there's the one about SMA. So let me look at that. But if you have other questions, please do post them. Made a longer SMA from price and see if it shows support or resistance. I mean, I'm not sure how that necessarily helps. Maybe for individual projects, it might help. For the market as a whole, I mean, I went and did a shorter 50-day or 50 sale SMA. because the one about 100 sales was too smooth. And I'll go into more detail about why I've chosen 50 days and what are the other options I've tried once I do the deeper explainer video. But I think the thing is, this is not the actual price here. This is the price normalized to a 0 to 10 index and then average across 10 projects. It might hit some resistances. I mean, it hit the resistance here. Whether that's actually meaningful is another question, and I'm not so sure that it is. Like if I look at this chart here, I don't see that much. I mean, yeah, you could say that there was a resistance level here, and when it broke through, it kind of waited a little bit here and then broke through and then just went straight down. That is one possible interpretation of this chart. Could you say there was a resistance level? Oops, I can't draw straight lines. You say there was, yeah, you could say there was a resistance level there that wasn't broken. Yeah, maybe, but the thing with technical analysis is it's kind of trying to make sense of chaos, and our brains are very good at providing potential meanings that don't necessarily have any kind of relationship to reality. Like if you've stared at the crypto markets for a while, it's very easy to say like, oh, I can see like, there's a support line here, or like, on this, when we're at this point, you might say, oh, look at that, it's perfect, it's a support line, it's definitely going to go there, and then it dumps there, and then it actually goes back up and finds a support line here. So actually it does confirm the support line at the moment, and that's just a pattern that we're projecting onto the data. And we need to be careful about this, because our brains have a tendency of telling us, yes, this is what is happening because that's the pattern that I'm seeing, when in fact it's just a pattern in our brains, and what is happening could be something completely different. But yeah, maybe there is some resistance at this level. We're 22 minutes in. Think of it similarly to looking at technical levels on like BTC dominance or market cap, which seems silly to use TA on, but at the same time seems to work. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad idea to do this kind of technical analysis on these charts. I mean, I'm kind of doing that like in these videos, but have a really strong helping of salt, because it is all just basically bullshit made up by our brains to try and make sense of chaos. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So long as you don't fall in love with your models, I think it's all right. If you start to be like, oh yeah, I know that is going to happen this way, so I'm going to bet, like I'm going to take a mortgage and buy, like, put all my money into base C, leveraged up and so on, and then the price sort of like goes there, because the reality doesn't really give a shit about your models and what you've leveraged and so on. Like, just don't believe your models too much, and that's probably a healthier place to be. That said, I still believe that the models that we're looking at here are more helpful to try and make sense of what's happening in the market than just the Twitter vibes, which are, yeah, they just seem to be the opposite of what the reality is. So I'll give a minute to see if there's another question. But right now, it seems like we've run out of questions for today, which is totally fine. I'm really grateful that you've all dialed in, or that you're listening to this after the fact. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Yeah, I hope you're finding this useful. Please share the videos with others if you find them useful, or the threads, or whatever else. So there's a question there: do you act on the charts? Yes, I do. In particular, I choose not to act. Like, that's probably the biggest action that I take. So I've kind of covered how I use the charts a little bit in the explainer video, but I'll cover it again now, or I'll cover it in a different way now. For me, like, the main reason why I came up with this was back here. There was a bull market, like there was a bull market in August and September. I entered the market in September. It was still kind of bullish at that point. And then it sort of fell off a cliff into the October and November and December bear market with the Jimmy Fallon pump in the middle. And back when the market changed, I invested a bunch of stuff into silly projects that were just pointless and I shouldn't have invested in, based on the fact that, well, everything seems to be going up, so might as well just put some money in these things that look like they might go up and, you know, collect some profits on the other side. And of course, as the market changed to bearish, all my money got locked up in all these projects, and I was not very happy about that because I couldn't exit them without significant losses. So I thought, okay, I'll wait until the next bull market. But I thought, okay, I want to know if the bull market is actually going to, like, I want to know when it changes from bull to bear. I want to have a clear answer about that. And I think like in September, I spent most of the month in the Lazy Lions Discord, in the Floor Talk channel, where there was a lot of people watching the price, watching the volumes, like making predictions about what's happening. And I was one of those people. And so I came up with the hypothesis that volumes tend to lead the price. And yeah, it felt like that was correct, and that probably a small subset of projects, like 10 key projects, their volume would typically drive the rest of the market, as in they would act as an early indicator for the rest of the market. And that's how I came up with this top 10 index to answer, are we in bull or are we in bear? And then, you know, how quickly are we changing from one to the other? If there's a spike here, is it sustained? Is it like, you know, does it mean it's time to degen again or not? So, so I was in Lazy Lions, by the way. I'm not in Lazy Lions anymore. So how I use this in terms of action? Well, you know, right now, because we're like, for the last few weeks, as I've seen that we're in the bear, I've not been investing in stuff. I'm only minting stuff where I knew that they would benefit from the post mint bump and so on, or stuff that I was happy to hold for like in the next 6 months to a year. There are a couple of exceptions, a couple of degen bets that I made, but you know, I've kept those very limited. Now that we're entering recovery, I'm going to be more willing to go and invest money in projects where, because I don't expect prices to just continue dropping forever. Like, I think they will recover, and this is a signal that tells me that they might start recovering. Whilst if I bought here, I would have seen, like, you know, a 30% drop in the price of whatever basket of top 10 projects that I bought at that point. So I'm more likely to buy now into stuff. I don't tend to buy in secondary, but I might, for example, I might buy back into Meta Angels at some point. The fact that the market is looking up or buy more into Meta Angels, the fact the market is looking up is a factor that leads me to want to do that. Are there other discords you're in for alpha? I'm not very active in most of the discords I'm in at the moment. So I like it's I am in a bunch of other discords, but not super active in them. So I don't think it's worth listing them. I know you're a big fan of Meta Angels. Any chance we can get some quick notes on why you're bullish on that project? Well, I mean, it's kind of like a tweet that I made today that because I was looking for something that I tweeted in the past, and I ended up finding an old tweet of mine. Where is it? There you go, this one. Back in 2015, I was tweeting with Rob Fitzpatrick and Eileen. So Rob is an entrepreneur. Eileen is an angel investor, founder of Passion Capital in the UK. And I suggested this favors tracking and trading marketplace. So that was already somewhere in my brain back then. And I've completely forgot about that, of course. But when I encountered Meta Angels, I was like, okay, that's what they're kind of doing, is a favors tracking and trading marketplace, a kind of personal network turned into an NFT project. And so since that idea had been sort of working in the back of my brain for 7 years, it's also like it resonated fairly quickly. And I believe that there is value in that. Like, I've believed that since 2015. So that's why I believe is the long-term value of Meta Angels. And disclosure, I own 13 Meta Angels. It's in my disclosure report, swombat.io/transparency.html. So I'm bullish on that because I think it's a good idea. I think the NFT market is going to have another boom, another bull. And I think the founders are really solid. Like, I've talked to them. They're experienced entrepreneurs. They've been like, you know, they're not just... and I've got nothing against young people trying to do stuff, but there is a value of experience that paradoxically I recognize more as I get older. You might say that's a bit self-serving, but it is what it is. So I see that the founders of Meta Angels are really driven and capable, and they're super connected, and they're trying to build something that leverages those connections to make that network of connections available to others. That feels like it's likely to do well to me. So that's why I'm bullish on them. It's now past, so I'm going to end the stream. Thank you very much to everybody who dialed in and anybody who's listening after the fact. I really appreciate your attention. And again, if you appreciate those updates, please share them with others. Yeah, I'd love to have more of an audience for this than I already do. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day, and see you tomorrow for the next one. Hopefully equally bullish. Bye.